Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Coming up, a Joe Biden extravaganza. You won't want to miss this one. We've gone deep into the archives to dig up the best of old Gaffy Joe as he finally finishes up as president. But first, cue the inauguration lefty meltdowns because Donald Trump is back, baby. Yes, some of those were even from the first inauguration, but this time round, it's music to my ears. The screams really warm my heart because we love to see it, don't we? It's over for the woke lefties who are just so desperately trying to stay relevant in this new era of optimism. Cue the Karens, please.
I would rather wear underwear full of angry bees than watch the inauguration on Monday.
And of course, when all else fails, make a public service announcement.
I don't know about you, but I will not be watching the inauguration. Not during the inauguration, not after the inauguration, not any part of it on the news. Who's with me?
Oh my God, please stop everything. If Karen wasn't watching, isn't going to watch, Trump should have definitely cancelled that inauguration. That's a huge blow for number 47. He will be absolutely devastated. I mean, what will these lefties do for the next 4 years?
A lying felon and adjudicated rapist is going to be taking an oath on the Bible. And you wonder why the world is laughing at us?
And look, please spare a thought for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is just not okay.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
Oh, so sad. Again, what will Donald Trump do without you? Now to Don Lemon, the sacked CNN host, who is continuing on a slippery slope into the never never. I mean, the poor guy is absolutely grasping at every straw possible.
Here's the breaking news for you. Remember, people were upset that Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden? Well, Joe Biden, President Biden, pardons his family on last day in office. Why is he doing that? Is it unprecedented? Yeah, it is unusual, but it's also because of the unprecedented, unusual administration that we have coming in, and he cannot trust his family in the hands of Donald Trump's Justice Department.
Yes, Don. Now, is this the same preemptive pardons that the Democrats warned Trump against for years?
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
The idea of a kind of prospective pardon, this sort of permanent federal get-out-of-jail-free card, that seems to be what we're talking about in the case of this, right, with Giuliani and his 3 eldest children who, as far as we know, have not been convicted of a crime. Maybe they've committed a lot, and they don't want to face action. I don't know. It's weird. I wouldn't ask for a pardon. I don't think I deserve one because I don't think I've done anything criminal. But, like, where does that come from, that concept that you can just kind of wave your magic pardon wand?
They never learn, do they? And has anyone seen Don Lemon? Donnie, your thoughts on that, please?
Ask anyone who knows me. They'll tell you. I don't believe in belittling people, belittling anyone.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought, Donnie. Now to the moment you've all been waiting for, the Joe Biden gaffe reel, and what a spectacle we have for you. Here is the now former leader of the free world, who we were told was healthy, thriving, sharp as a tack, and rigorous, when really he was a potato this whole time, being propped up by stage mum Jill Biden. Please cue the tape.
the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. Imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Look, it brings a tear to my eyes, doesn't it? It really, it's a somber moment. It's a real sad moment. I mean, what are we going to do without him? Bye-bye, Joe. Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. Kosha, great to see you. Thank you so much. Look, it's been a huge day, hasn't it? A very historic day, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. There's a lot to get through. But firstly, I want to start on this because Donald Trump has signed pardons for around 1,500 participants in the January 6, 2021 riot at the US Capitol. Kosha, he was always going to do that. Are you surprised, though, that this was his first port of call?
This was definitely a key signature issue. Expectations among his base were very, very high. There was a little bit of a question mark. There were some reports coming out there that maybe he won't do all of them, maybe it won't be a blanket pardon, possibly. And there was a little bit of a civil war going on within his base about that. But he delivered to them. And I think on the heels of what Biden did today, which is the other big story of all those pardons preemptively to controversial figures and his family members, he just really paved the way for this. I think it's all 1,500. There's 6 people where he's commuted their sentences and they might eventually result in a pardon. But all in, this is a full cleansing of what pretty much most of the country sees as an over-prosecution of Americans who've been in there for 4 years with a punishment that far outpaced the crimes committed.
Absolutely, and I think that there will be a lot of supporters celebrating this decision. But yeah, interesting, it was one of his first orders. But speaking of, Donald Trump has signed more than 200 executive orders on his first day. I've got to say, Kosha, he really wasted no time because you look at the footage. He went from the inauguration to the actual celebrations themselves, and then suddenly he was ushered into an office where the cameras were on him as he was signing one executive order after another. What are some of the key items on that list?
And, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, at least in the past several presidents. It's because 6 months leading up to this, he already had privately funded his transition team, and all of these ducks were in a row, ready to go legally and everything else on his desk. It spans the gamut, the pardons, like we just talked about, hiring freezes for the federal government, forcing people to come back into work physically in the office 5 days a week post-COVID, declaring a national emergency at the border, which is going to unlock a whole host of other things that come out of that on his immigration issue, withdrawing from certain international agreements, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, which many people are angry about post-COVID, and there's another 15 that I'm not even mentioning.
No, that's fair enough. I do want to go through some of the more international ones soon, but it feels like he's really trying to clean up the public service with these executive orders. Why do you think that is a priority for Donald Trump?
That's one thing where with the swipe of a pen, he can do it because that is where the executive branch has jurisdiction, that's in his purview, and a lot of it is just enforcing laws that are on the books or trying to shrink the bloat of government. All the Doge cutting and all of that will fall into that as well. Some of them he's testing the limit of the law by design. For example, ending birthright citizenship, which I think no country, maybe one other country has this. Ending birthright citizenship for illegal aliens, for example. You come in illegally, you have a baby, you don't automatically get U.S. citizenship. That will be tested in the courts, and he knows that. So some are in that category, but a lot of the other ones, to your point, is just it falls in his purview. He's not wasting any time, and anything where he doesn't have to rely on Congress, doesn't have to rely on the judiciary, he's just going full speed.
He's absolutely going full speed. And what do you think that this says about the sort of president that he will be, that he's not mucking around? And a lot of them, he made promises before the election. He won on that mandate. He's getting straight down to business. What do you think the next 4 years will be like?
If today is any indication, and let's hope he doesn't lose steam, we really are going to see huge change and huge disruption. This was such a high contrast election in every which way, in terms of policy, in terms of substance, in terms of style, in terms of energy, in terms of stamina, all of it. And today is just finally the fruits of that labor of what was a very hard-fought campaign is coming to light. And if this is an indication of what's to come, it's not going to be anything like the first time because he's much more organized. And it's also much more prepared. A lot of the attacks from the other side have fizzled out, so that it's hard for them to rerun those attacks. And you'd have to think that somebody who's been impeached, indicted, convicted, almost assassinated, is a changed human being, has nothing to lose, and he's just going to leave everything out on the field for the country.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting 4 years ahead. If today is anything to go by, boy, we're in for a fascinating ride. Now, we mentioned some of the international executive orders, and I found this one to be particularly interesting because Donald Trump has announced he is pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. This is what he said.
I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff. The United States will not sabotage our own industries while China pollutes with impunity.
Kosha, I want to get to the consequences for Australia in a moment, but firstly, Donald Trump's been professing the new green scam, as he's been calling renewable energy for the last few years. So this doesn't come as a surprise. But what does it mean now for climate targets that were put in place by the Biden administration?
It dismantles them. This whole Paris Climate Accord has been a yo-yo, where Obama signed them in. As soon as Trump won the first time, he withdrew. There was sort of an expiration period where he couldn't do it overnight, had to let it run its course. Finally withdrew, lost the election. Biden comes in, reinstates it, and now back to removing it. So each time that yo-yo sort of has been going back and forth. But I think, as he said there, that it runs antithetical to his agenda, which is U.S. energy dominance, growing industry at home, and these types of agreements. Even if you support wanting to keep the planet clean, which I think most people do, these agreements don't get there. It's just a massive transfer of power and transfer of wealth from some nations to others, some sectors to others, and it means in time, when this stuff is unwound, it will cease to exist.
Well, hopefully this is a big wake-up call for here in Australia with our renewable energy fantasy that we're going down under. But what does pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord now mean for Australia? Because it had been foreshadowed for some time. Mm-hmm. Does it impact us at all?
Hopefully it gives a little bit of a permission structure to push harder, because it's been a mini yo-yo here too, where Prime Minister Abbott, I think, signed on to it, and then he actually wanted to withdraw from it once the details came out, and then couldn't politically, and all the rest of it. So maybe we've got our own election coming up over here. This might pave the way for that type of discussion. Also, just specifically that transfer of wealth and power that we mentioned, the United States taxpayer funds a lot of projects that other countries are beneficiaries of through this accord, and if we pull out, if the US pulls out, then that funding dries up, and that may have some ripple effect to other countries, including Australia.
Well, I just find it fascinating that he's putting America first, which is exactly what he promised to do, and I hope that sets a standard for places like Australia first. Put your own country first and stop relying overseas. Now, let's move on, because one of the other things that was quite notable was the big tech titans who were on full display at the inauguration. You had Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai and Tim Cook. They all hung out together, and apparently it was by choice. They looked very chummy in a number of the photos. But I read that the combined net wealth of the billionaires who attended the event was $1.2 trillion US dollars, Kosha, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, some of these tech giants we know in the past, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, they they have criticised Donald Trump, but now it seems the tide has turned. They're all suddenly kissing the ring. Why do you think it's important in particular, not just for billionaires, but for the technology world to be in with Donald Trump as opposed to out?
This is a big story from this election. The tide has turned because Trump turned it. They sort of came kicking and screaming because decidedly over the past, I would say 3 or 4 decades, even well before Trump, Silicon Valley has been very favorable to the left in cash and kind. If you look at their donations, if you look at the issue set that they lobby for, it's not always in line with the America First or sort of the populist mantra. And in kind, all the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story or of COVID origin theories and all of that helped one side much, much more than the other. So it's really interesting from that to this, where they're kissing the ring and donating to his inauguration fund and looking all chummy. I think some of it might be self-preservation or expediency on their part, which is fine. You don't have to like each other, but if you've got common cause for the goal of America First, wonderful. And some of it might be that they just know that this is where the power is now, and it's in their interest to get on board, because if not, they'll be left behind.
But also, what does it say about Donald Trump as a businessman? Because, you know, it would be easy just to snub these people who have been quite rude to him in public forums for many years, but he knows how to foster relationships.
He really does, which is so funny given just the caricature that most of the world's media put on him and painted him as. He's actually very good at, he will counterpunch. We all know that. He's coarse in his style, but he is actually very good at letting bygones be bygones when it's time to forge a new alliance. You could see that with all sorts of people, from Megyn Kelly, as an example, a journalist, to these tech folks over here, and everyone in between. If there's common ground to be found for his vision of America First, he will do a deal.
He will do it, yeah, which is a good president. That's a good leader in my opinion, a very good leader. Now, President Trump also vowed to be the first commander-in-chief to put US astronauts on Mars. This is what he said.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
But I got to say, I really liked this. This response from Elon Musk says it all. Oh, he's very happy. Elon Musk is stoked. But, you know, look, the space race is interesting at the moment, Kosha, because you've got countries worldwide, China, Russia, everybody is competing in that sphere now. What role does the US play?
Such a central question. So it's been 56 years since America decidedly took the mantle there and sent the first man on the moon. Nobody else has done it since then. And you could argue that era was the peak of US exceptionalism and ingenuity, and it all sort of manifests in that moment of Neil Armstrong going on there and having a phone call with Richard Nixon. And since then, the last half century, it's been a managed decline in so many aspects, US society, economically, culturally, and everything else. So Trump clearly has a vision. All these things he's talking about in terms of economics, culture, regulations, foreign policy, all of that, America First, make it strong. And then the manifestation of that, the pinnacle of it, is going back and winning the space race and out-competing other countries that have come a long way, like China, since then. That's his mission. That's something that Elon Musk has said is a big motivation for him. So that's that common cause that we talked about.
No, I think it's terrific. It's going to be interesting. Plus, it's a huge industry, the space industry. So I look forward to see what happens there. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy has pulled the pin as co-leader of the Department of Government Efficiency, apparently due to his interest in running for governor of Ohio. Kosha, I was quite surprised by this. It didn't take very long. It was picked by Donald Trump, but now he's left.
It always probably was a conceptual thing, having two leaders, co-CEOs, two billionaires.
With Elon Musk.
With Elon Musk, and Vivek. Nice idea, but I always thought maybe, I'm not sure, too many cooks in the kitchen, one could argue. But I think the more important reason is the governorship. So he's from Ohio. The governor there, Mark Devine, is term limited. So in 2026, that's going to be an open seat. Vivek kind of came out of nowhere and just in 15 minutes really went from a nobody to a household name now in America. So strike while the iron's hot. And if he does win, then that's a good thing, because he is, generally speaking, America First and an ally of Trump, and we need more governors Trump needs more governors that support his agenda.
Absolutely. Yeah, it didn't last very long at all. Now, we have to talk about Barron Trump, the son, of course, of Melania and Donald Trump, who has once again stolen the show at the inauguration. The internet is abuzz talking about how tall and stature this man is and say that he is a president in waiting. I tend to agree, Kosha. We know that he played quite a pivotal part in his father's election campaign. He was the one who encouraged him to go on podcasts like Joe Rogan, which really helped him get over the line. But you just look at him, he's so staunch, he's a strong man, and I think he's going to be a future leader. What do you think?
He's got a lot of the raw ingredients. So people love the Trump kids and the Trump family. They're also well put together, they're very attractive, they're smart, they're accomplished, all of that. And he was just a little 10-year-old boy the last time around, and they've sort of been keeping him out of the limelight, very private people, Melania famously. And now he's back thrust onto the scene, so tall. I think he's 6'7".
Yeah.
He's completely grown up in front of our eyes. And as you mentioned, he played a pivotal role in his media strategy. He seems to love the crowd and the energy. But like his mother, he doesn't say much. He's a little bit of an enigma. And I think that will serve him well, where he's creating a lot of interest, and he may burst out onto the scene at some point in the future.
I completely agree. All eyes on Barron. I just think he's an absolute star. Now, speaking of his mother, we've got to talk about the fashion, because Melania looked very sharp today, but her hat got in the way of an important photo opportunity. Have a look. Well, you can't help it. You know, Trump gave it a go. But meanwhile, Jeffrey Bezos' fiance's outfit was a little lingerie number. It's raised some eyebrows. And I've got to say, it looked like it raised Mark Zuckerberg's eyebrows too. We've got some vision there. He couldn't keep his eyes off her as well. But look, firstly, Melania, I thought looked lovely. Not sure about this outfit. What do you think?
Agree. I call Melania's outfit high fashion warpath, because there's a message she's sending. It's like, you know, this is my space. It's like an armor. Don't mess with me. And the fashion industry very openly snubbed her the first time around. She objectively is the most gorgeous first lady, and they said they wouldn't dress her, never put her on the cover of magazines, as she'd already been on them previously, etc.
Exactly.
And Jeff Bezos' fiance, I think she probably should have chosen something different.
Questionable. It's questionable, Kosha. It certainly is. Well, it's been wonderful to speak with you. Thanks for joining me to unpack what's been a historic day in the US. Appreciate your time, Kosha Garter. Thank you. Joining me now is Newsweek Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, thank you so much for joining me. Look, I've got to say, it's finally happened. The world is healing. Order is restored already. Donald Trump will issue an order ending federal diversity, equity and inclusion programs. Hallelujah, finally. Now, this order will instruct senior officials in the White House, Office of Management and Budget and the Office of Personnel Management to determine what programs need to be gutted. Josh, it's finally going to be merit all the way, not based on race, not based on gender, but on merit. Has the post-woke world begun, do you think?
It's definitely beginning. You know, this actually goes back to the final year of the first Trump administration. So in the very final months of the first Trump administration, my friend Chris Rufo was working really hard to get DEI banned in the federal government. And now here we are right out of the gate, and we're doing it literally on day one. And it's not just DEI that's being banned in the federal government. It's also gender ideology. It's also the transgender agenda. That was a separate executive order that was implemented earlier today as well. The federal government of the United States now stands by the policy that there are two and precisely two genders. There is male and there is female, and that is it. So we are really seeing the prudential use of government power to fight back against the woke agenda there. And it's a beautiful sight to behold there. I mean, it's hard to keep up, frankly, with all the executive orders that are coming through there, whether it's immigration, whether it's energy, whether it's Trump withdrawing from the WHO, the World Health Organization there, putting American forces on the southern and potentially even the northern border with Canada. But the point is that this is morning in America again. As Ronald Reagan would have said there, it is a joyous day. I was grinning ear to ear watching this inauguration, watching him sign these executive orders. The thing about Donald Trump also, I have to say there, he's just such a funny, entertaining person there. I've been watching him on television here basically all day, grinning ear to ear. I miss this free daily Trump entertainment as well. I have to say that as well.
Oh, look, and more to come. I completely agree. And I just want to pick you up on what you mentioned there, that Donald Trump has declared that the US will only recognise two genders, male and female. This is what he said.
As of today, It will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Josh, this would have been virtually unthinkable years ago. People say, no, you can't say that because it's offensive, you're a bigot, you can't do that, can't say that. What does it say about where we are now in the world?
Donald Trump understands something very important that a lot of other Republican politicians here in the U.S. do not understand. And let me explain what that is. So there's been a debate on the American right for a very long time as to the relationship between culture and politics. So for instance, the late, great Andrew Breitbart, the founder of the website Breitbart, famously said that culture is upstream of politics. Basically, that if you want to control politics, it's downstream of culture. You have to control the culture first. I have always thought that that's a little too cute by half, because culture and politics operate in a two-way street where the culture can affect the politics. Politics can also affect the culture. I think Donald Trump understands that. He intuits that. He understands that. He understands that when it comes to civilizational issues, questions of the human person, of human anthropology, such as male and female, God created them, you have to choose. You actually cannot take the so-called neutral way out. You actually have to make a decision and put a thumb on the scale here. This is an example of making that decision, of having the courage to actually do that and to lead by political example, and the culture ultimately, God willing, here in America will follow as well there. So see, he's a little older. He's one of the older American presidents, not as old as the previous guy, but he nonetheless, I think, in terms of his understanding between culture and politics, is actually very new and edgy in a way that a lot of the Republican old guard still resist to this day. That's their loss in his game, though.
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting observation. You're spot on. Now, look, let's talk about transparency. Trump has vowed to release long classified government records on the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. This is what he said.
We are going to make public remaining records relating to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Josh, so he's vowing to restore government transparency. Why is this so important in this administration?
Well, it's important because Americans' trust in government right now is at an all-time historic low. I mean, Americans have not distrusted the government this much probably in the entire history of modern American public polling. I mean, I couldn't even tell you when the last time I think it would be even close to this. Maybe the Jimmy Carter years of stagflation and the Iran hostage crisis, probably even including that, though. So if you want to try to get the American people back on your side, well, the easiest way to do that is with good policy, to get the economy humming again, to seal the southern border with Mexico there, to get peace on the global stage in the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, so forth there. Another fairly easy way is to show that you stand with the people. So when the American people have long-standing questions that they're not getting clear answers from the government, give them the answers. Again, unless there is a truly compelling national security reason there. But frankly, when it comes to something like the JFK assassination, it's been 60 years. I mean, whatever national security implications there might have been at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis with the Soviet Union, you know, that's literally decades in the past at this point there. So why not? I say why not? Heck, I say at this point, I want to know whether there are aliens at Area 51 out in Nevada, outside of Las Vegas. I suspect probably not, but while we're going down this rabbit hole, why not? Keep it coming. There's a lot of questions out there. I suspect Donald Trump's going to give us a lot of fun answers.
Oh, look, wouldn't we want to know the answers to that? I completely agree. You're going down the rabbit hole, so I think just keep going, strike while the iron is hot. Now, I thought this was particularly interesting, though unsurprising. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were booed entering the Capitol for the inauguration. Have a look at this.
The President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Harris.
Well, Josh, look, they're all MAGA supporters there. They were never going to give them a rousing reception. But it brings into question, because Biden leaves office with historically low approval ratings. Kamala's still dancing about like a moron with interchanging accents. It seems like America really has had enough of those two.
You know, I think it's difficult to put into words just the utter shambles that the Democratic Party is currently in here. First of all, they all hate each other. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, the titans of the current Democratic Party, throw in Chuck Schumer, I guess, as well there. They actually genuinely cannot stand each other. A lot of this gets back to the major divide this past summer as to whether or not to kick Joe Biden off the ticket and put in Kamala Harris. A lot of these simmering divides to this day have not fully healed from that. But more to the point, their agenda, especially the post-2008, post-Barack Obama, post-woke intersectional identity politics coalition of the aggrieved interest coalition, it's all been emphatically rejected. One, because it's totally divisive there. Barack Obama and Joe Biden claim to be uniters. All they did actually was pit one Americans against the other, whether it was white versus black, whether it was the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, team red versus team blue, you name it there. They have been massive, massive dividers. And more to the point, their policy has just been utterly catastrophic, whether it is inflation, whether it is the economy, whether it is crime in America's urban corridors, people getting pushed, God forbid, on the subway cars in New York City, stories like the Danielle Penny story there, the woman lit on fire, foreign policy, I mean, the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, China, looking like they're going to invade Taiwan every day. It's basically a hotspot all across the world there. They have failed, and they have failed catastrophically. And the best part is, as someone personally who wishes the Democrats nothing but harm, the best part is I have no idea where they go from here. I genuinely am glad that that is not my problem, because I actually do not know what the answer is. But I suspect that they're going to be in the political wilderness for some time now, because there's no clear and easy answer as to how they possibly get themselves back to a place of respectability without somehow sacrificing their far left base as well. I don't know how you walk that tightrope. I'm not sure that they know how to do it either.
Well, I mean, they did it to themselves, didn't they? I mean, this is all that their own doing. They're in this mess because that they were too slow to change the candidates. So, look, we'll see what happens over the next few years. Now, in his last act as president, Joe Biden issued sweeping preemptive pardons for his entire family, as well as former COVID advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, and members of the January 6th committee to, quote, shield them from politically motivated prosecutions under the Trump administration. Josh, look, I don't know. I think this was unsurprising. He was always going to do it. But what do you make of this at the 11th hour to go and issue these pardons?
It's just truly shameful stuff. You know, Joe Biden told us time and time again that the reason that you had to vote for Joe Biden, and then after the Democrats pulled their bloodless coup, that you had to vote for Kamala Harris, he said time and time again, you got to vote for Team Blue. You got to vote for the Democrats, because the other guy, Donald Trump, he's a Hitler, fascist, Nazi there who's going to blow up the Constitution. He hates norms. How many times over the past 4 years have we been lectured time and time again about how the January 6th guy is a great perpetrator when it comes to desecrating American norms there? And then you fast forward to the past few months here, especially since the election in November. How many norms is Joe Biden going to blow up in flames on his way out the door here? I mean, it's basically like he's taken a match. He's taken an entire reservoir of gasoline and just poured an entire box of matches on fire into this gasoline on the way out there. Literally on Friday, he tweeted that he was recognizing a new constitutional amendment. The National Archives here was like, dude, you can't do that. That's not how the constitutional process works. These pardons at the last hour, preemptively pardoning the Biden family, his brother Jim Biden, 5 or 6 family members there, 15 minutes before Donald Trump was to put his hand on the Bible and take the oath of office. I can't believe this. I mean, it makes America look so patently silly, so patently tribal, and frankly, so patently third world. I cannot wait for this guy to get out of office, to get the heck off my television screen. Frankly, I think it's going to be a very long time until we hear from him again. It actually wouldn't shock me, frankly, if we don't hear from him again until his funeral.
Look, I think we've all been thinking the same. Let's be realistic. And I agree, it was completely dodgy, totally dodgy of him 15 minutes before that inauguration. Now, look, let's move on, because the family of Doron Steinbercher, one of the 3 Israeli hostages freed from Hamas this week, has thanked Donald Trump for her release, saying, "We also extend our gratitude to Trump for his significant involvement and support, which means so much to us." Here was Donald Trump talking about the situation in the Middle East.
My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families.
Josh, how much of this deal and what's going on right now in the Middle East can be put down to Donald Trump's influence and his very strong words leading up to the inauguration?
Well, I think that the recent ceasefire hostage deal is overwhelmingly due to Donald Trump and his new Middle East special envoy, Steve Witkoff. I mean, you look at the fact that Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, and Brett McGurk and that whole national security team, if you can even call it that, they tried for a very long time, literally over a year, to get a second deal since the initial one in November 2023. They couldn't do it. Trump and Witkoff got involved in a matter of days. It was done. So I think they are overwhelmingly responsible for this particular deal. I guess, though, if I'm being honest, I would sound the note of caution. I'm not frankly in love with this deal, to be very honest with you. It's amazing that these hostages are released. Obviously, if I were one of the family members, I would want to do everything possible. That goes without saying there. I worry, though, about the incentives that this sends. When you are trading hundreds, thousands, frankly, of the most hardened jihadist terrorists out there for just a few dozen hostages there, what incentives does that send about trying to reward terrorism, trying to incentivize further hostage taking there? Ultimately, it's going to be a push come to shove situation. Is Prime Minister Netanyahu going to have the political capital and the political will to send the IDF back into Gaza to finish the job there? Because I want to be very clear about this. Unless and until Hamas is decapitated and fully destroyed as a military and political organization in Gaza, unless and until that happens, Israel will have lost this war. That's a very, very, very important thing to remember. I believe Donald Trump understands that there, but we'll find out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we certainly will. We'll see how this one plays out. Josh Hammer, good to catch up. Thanks very much for joining me on the show this evening.
Thank you so much.